Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, I just wanted to share with you, I mean, this is going to be a real long video, but I just thought that, if some of the viewers weren't aware of some of the things that are going on and like starting to happen, I just wanted to make you guys aware of it. And again, it's not to, go all crazy and, this is this and this is, all that or whatever. It's more or less just to inform viewers of some of the realities that are happening. The first thing I want to say is that one of the viewers asked what music I was listening to earlier this morning, and I got caught listening to Yanni. So I do like Yanni. I like Live at the Acropolis. That's a really good album. So a little bit about that. I listen mostly to movie soundtracks, and I know that sounds really weird or odd, but that's the kind of music I like. And so I'm a real big fan of John Williams. He's one of my favorite composers. I love classical music. There's a group that's called Brunaville that is more like an ancient Celtic leaning orchestra that I really like. And anyway, I did get caught listening to Yanni this morning. So I like Yanni Live at the Acropolis. I think it's a great album. And but that's the kind of music I like. So I listen to a lot of that. I very rarely listen to the radio or anything like that unless I'm, out in the gym or training. Then, maybe some more modern music. But other than that, I really like I like more of symphonic music and music that kind of sets a mood. So anyway, that was Yanni this morning, Live at the Acropolis, that I was listening to. So I was going to share a couple of soundtracks with you, but I think I'll just let that off or let that go. So anyway, I was doing some reading, and I came across an article in Sweden. In places in Sweden, they're no longer accepting cash, and there's like a small chip. It's like a microchip that's being injected in the right hand, just above the thumb, and that's how some of these people are using. That's how they're like buying their food, or showing their medical records or their ID and things like that. And I thought it struck me because I never thought I would live to see that. Not in my day anyway. I never thought I would live to see that actually happening, but they're doing it. And so for a certain fee or a certain amount of money, I think it was a little over $200, you can get all of your information put on this microchip, and they inject it into your hand. And that's how you pay for your food, or you can, show that you bought tickets to a movie or an event and things like that. So anyway, I thought you guys might find that a little interesting. I know I did. And then I also wanted to talk about some of the things that are coming out about what happened with the, you see, I got to say it in the right way, otherwise I get canceled. With the thing that was mandated, there's a lot of information coming out now that it very well could be responsible for causing a lot of damage. So I had a friend send me a video. I think it was from Rumble, and I think it was called "Died Suddenly," and so you can look that up. But there are professionals on there, professional doctors, scientists, people that work in funeral homes and do embalming, and they're finding the same thing in all of these people. And so what it's showing is that a lot of people, including myself, who were called conspiracy theorists about this, weren't. And the truth is coming out slowly but surely. And just through prayer and discernment, there was something off about it. It just wasn't right. And so I would ask that you can just pray for that. Pray that the truth come out about this, because there was there's a lot of stuff wrong with that, and I think in many ways still is. The power and the control part of it hasn't been given up in a lot of places in the world, and especially in China. And that has to do with the third part that I wanted to talk about was control. And so I do want to ask you to pray for the people in China, because these protests and things that are going on. There's been a lot of stuff going on there that hasn't been let out of the bag, but it's starting to creep out. And so please, please pray for the people in China, because communism, it always ends up the same way. And they do not want to relinquish their power. And so, I really can't imagine what those people are going through, with this zero COVID policy, that, they can't do anything. They can't leave their homes. They're, being put in, special places where they have to stay, because they, supposedly tested positive for COVID. And, I can't even remember the last time there was a COVID death in China. So, it's getting pretty grim over there for a lot of people. So I want to ask you that you pray for the people of China. But again, it just the whole thing about being called conspiracy theorists, and so many of you I know as well, it's all coming out now. And we need to continue to pray that the truth comes out, and that all of this darkness, all of this stuff is really, has the light shed on it. And to pray for this country, especially. I was reading a message from Our Lady of Medjugorje, one of the earliest messages that she gave, and she talked about how the United States has made great gains, but that we had done so without God, and that the country was going to go in the direction that it's gone. It was really a prophetic message from Our Lady, and that the spirit of the Antichrist would really rise in the West and spread. And I don't think there's any question about that. Looking at the country we live in, I mean, there's a lot of places where people don't have the freedoms that we have, but it's what we've done with our freedoms. And then, this other stuff being kind of integrated into our society, especially with the youth. And that just goes completely against church teaching, completely against the Christian foundation that this country was built on. And, we kind of see it spreading. And so it is a form of control when you inject, such immorality and such ideas into society under the banner of inclusion and, acceptance and things like that. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a psychologist, and we were having a little bit of a discussion on society. I just kind of asked her about if she could give a what do you call it, a diagnosis, just kind of overall. And just in the discussion, we kind of both agreed that, things that have been injected into society and into our communities and our schools and our colleges and things like that, what's happened is it's led to a humanism, a worship of self, to where people can do what they want and it's all okay, and there's nothing wrong with it, unless of course you disagree, and then you're kind of shunned. And I think that's going to increase. But what's really happening on a psychological level is that people are drawn to that kind of thing because of our fallen nature, especially if there's no relationship with God. And it has a psychological effect on the mind when you engage in that kind of behavior, when you begin to go down that road. We've seen some people who have, changed their identity and even gone, really far with this, only to regret it really, really bad later on in life with some real, emotional damage and psychological damage. So it's like they're just jumping in without realizing the psychological and the emotional damage that it does, not to mention the spiritual damage. But by the time they realize, the damage is already done. And so, I see it as a real evil on those three levels, especially with the things that are being injected. And in reading that message of Our Lady of Medjugorje, when she talked about the West, and that we would spread this relativism and this humanism and this kind of ideology around the world, it is a spirit of Antichrist. And it made me think, it made me wonder, if that wasn't the real reason for the request to pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy every day and offer it in reparation for the sins committed by the United States, because we've spread it, as where we used to spread Christian values and human rights and liberty and freedom. We've changed in that sense. And I don't think as a people, I think the majority of the citizens of the United States still believe that, but it's the power structure that's really seems to have gone off the edge with that. And, we're kind of to blame too, because we kind of stood back and took it and, it'll go away, or, however we think about those things without really standing up and saying something. And now it seems like just this big wall of water that there's no way to stop. And so I think, and again, in reflecting on that, I think that's the reason, or one of the main reasons, that that the request was made to pray the chaplet in reparation for the sins of this country. So with that being said, I do, again, if you get an opportunity, look at the thing that's going on in Sweden, because again, I never thought I would live to see the day to where they were actually putting, chips in people's right hands that, that held all your information and your identity and your medical records and, your bank card and everything is on it. And, so they're doing that in Sweden, and I don't know, maybe you guys already knew about it. I didn't. I don't really, look into all that stuff too much. And then the other request was to pray for the people in China, and I guess the reason is because, again, it's about control. And communism, it always ends up in the same place. It always ends up in the same place. It doesn't change. And so I would ask that you pray for the people in China and any other place in the world that's has a communist dictatorship. But there's just so many things to pray for. We really need to pray for the world. The governments that are in power, it's almost like there's everyone has an agenda. And the people are not really thought of anymore. There's really no thought about, governing for the people. You look at what's going on in Ukraine and how many people have had to leave and, their homes and their jobs and their livelihoods, and they've lost loved ones. And there doesn't seem to be a real effort to sit down and try to solve this in a peaceful way. And so, again, there's a lot to pray for in the world. But, with the thing in Sweden, go ahead and look that up, like I said. As far as myself or any of you guys being called a conspiracy theorist about this whole pandemic thing, you can be at ease, because like I say, there's a lot of things coming to light. So look up that video. I think it was called Died Suddenly. You can watch that. Again, it's not to cause fear, it's just to inform. And then also to pray for the people in China, because again, what that's all about is control. And we're seeing it on some level globally, but not like it's happening in China. And so I'm going to ask you to pray for those people. Also, I'm going to end this. I had something come to me, and I wanted to share this with you. I've talked a little bit about it before, but there's a lot of, as you know, most of you anyway, there's a lot of prophetic voices out there. There's a lot of, people claiming to be seers and this and that and the other. What I wanted to do was, well, first thing I wanted to tell you was, you know what, this is funny. When I did the reminder on a number of videos ago, I did a reminder, and it was one of the things I think I said in one of the earliest videos that I did, that if you're here looking for a video that's going to give some kind of date or something that's going to happen the next day, or something like that, then you were in the wrong place. And since I've said that, my views have gone down by over 1,000. I thought it was funny, but I think that had something to do with it. So again, it's just a matter of being aware and not chasing after these things, because it's dangerous, for one, and for another, it doesn't help us grow in holiness. And so when I thought about that this morning, there were a number of things that came to me, and I wanted to share these with you. And I've talked about these prophecies and these messages and the seers, and kind of the danger of chasing all these things around. I recommended a video done, I think, by the Divine Will Era channel, I think it is, with Father Anuzzi, in which he talked about it. But I wanted to share a couple of things with you, and I hope I didn't just lose that. It was in the Diary of Faustina. A couple of things about prophetic utterances and things of that nature, prophecy and that stuff. So a lot of these messages that are out there seem to be prophetic. Okay, in other words, they're talking about events that have yet to come, and so again, prophetic. But they all seem to be bad, and there's nothing good in it. And that was one of the things that I noticed this morning when I started thinking about some of the ones that I've looked at and some of the ones that people have sent to me. There's the thing that's missing is turn to God with your whole heart. Learn to love suffering. If you read the lives of the saints, the way Jesus speaks to his soul is really is to help it grow in love, in faith, hope, and love, and to grow in the virtues. And I noticed that, again, in some of the ones that have been sent to me, some of the ones that I've seen, there just seems to be a lot of destruction. There's no pray the rosary every day. There's no, so there's like a part of it missing. There's just a lot of bad stuff. And again, as I said before, just in talking with some of you, through the chats and through the comments and things like that, you could tell there's a lot of anxiety and fear. And I wanted to read this to you because it popped in my head this morning after I went to work. And it comes from the Diary of Faustina. And Jesus says to her, it is entry number 1488, but it's about halfway down. And Jesus says to her, my child, know that the greatest obstacles to holiness are discouragement and an exaggerated anxiety. These will deprive you of the ability to practice virtue. All temptations united together ought not disturb your interior peace, not even momentarily. Okay, so the whole thing about that is that how are we going to grow in holiness if we're constantly being bombarded with these things that are doing nothing but causing fear and anxiety? And so again, it's just one of the ways of discerning these things, because we're called in the times in which we're living. Jesus and Mary are calling us to be holy and to grow in virtue, to grow in love with Jesus, to grow in love of embracing our crosses and understanding the importance of redemptive suffering. And it made me want. It just, what it did was show me how contradictory the messages are that cause all this fear and anxiety compared to what Jesus says. And it's really, when you look at those two in the light, it'll tell you immediately where it's coming from. Now, that's not to say that there aren't messages out there and things like that that don't have to do with chastisements that are probably true. There may be valid seers out there that receive locutions and have to do with persecutions of the church and things like that. Those are all facts. They're all true. I mean, all you've got to do is read the Bible and know the Catechism of the Catholic Church. But what seems to be missing from them is the antidote. And the antidote is prayer. The antidote is growing in holiness, is growing in love, is growing in virtue. And instead, it's causing a great deal of fear and anxiety. And discouragement is really just another word for a lack of trust in that context. Because we hear so many bad things that are going to happen or bad things that are coming, and we become discouraged, and it really chips away at hope and at trust. And so I wanted to read this to you out of Faustina's diary. And Jesus said, it is the greatest obstacle, the two greatest obstacles to holiness, to which we're being called to by Mary and Jesus, to grow in holiness as much as we can, are discouragement and exaggerated anxiety, no matter where they come from. Okay? So the anxiety, again, can come from a number of different places. But that is one of the things that is causing anxiety. Now, where was this one? It was in, don't tell me I lost it. It comes from the letters of Paul. And he talks about, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about prophecy, because a lot of the things that, that we hear, one of the reasons, or one of the things that these things stand by or proclaim is to not despise prophetic utterances, okay? And so they take that from the writings of Paul and then use that as a foundation to spill out all these so-called messages and things like that. But again, and some of them there's no doubt in my mind, are valid. But some of them, again, that's one of the ways that you can tell if it's missing an antidote, an answer to all these bad things. And so I wanted to read from 1 Corinthians real quick, and this is chapter 14. Starting at 1, this is St. Paul, again, 1 Corinthians chapter 14. He says, pursue love, but strive eagerly for the spiritual gifts. Above all, that you may prophesy. For one who speaks in tongues does not speak to human beings, but to God, for no one listens. He utters mysteries in spirit. On the other hand, one who prophesies does not speak, or does speak to human beings, for their building up, encouragement, and solace. Whoever speaks in a tongue builds up self, but whoever prophesies builds up the church. And think about what we're talking about here. Building up the church in faith, hope, and love. Okay? Now I should like all of you to speak in tongues, but even more so to prophesy. One who prophesies is greater than one who speaks in tongues, unless he interprets, so that the church may be built up. Okay? So the point that I'm trying to make here is something that I've talked about before. A gift of prophecy or a prophetic spirit or a prophetic utterance isn't a bad thing. It's a valid gift of the Holy Spirit. But it should build up faith, hope, and love. Okay? It's not the gift itself is not, the majority of it, or the bigger portion of that gift is not to, constantly blurt out these things that are, these messages that this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And again, it's one of the ways that, one of the things that's caused a lot of confusion, because there's so many of them today. But they should build up in faith, hope, and love. And that's what Paul's talking about here. It is a very clear message, a clear voice, but it builds you up in faith, hope, and love. And when you compare this reading and that gift, and lay it side by side with what Jesus was teaching Faustina, that the two greatest the two greatest obstacles to growing in holiness is discouragement and exaggerated anxiety. And that should tell us all something about a prophetic word or a so-called locution or so-called message that is doing nothing but causing discouragement, fear, and anxiety. Okay? John, in his epistle, says that perfect love drives out fear. It drives out all fear. And so this is perfect. This is growing in holiness. It's growing in virtue. The prophetic gift should build up faith, hope, and love. Okay? And in perfect love, in union with God, all fear is dispersed. And it's so, again, it's one of the ways that that we are able to discern where something is coming from. Okay? If it's causing that anxiety, that fear, that discouragement, like there's no hope for the world, okay, you need to stay away from it. Not according to me, but according to St. Paul and according to Jesus when he spoke to St. Faustina. Because we're being called to grow in virtue. We're being called to grow in grace. We're being called to grow in holiness. And if we're discouraged, as Jesus says, or if we have exaggerated anxiety, then those are the two biggest obstacles standing in the way of us growing in holiness. Now, if those two obstacles are coming through messages of so-called locutions or visionaries or seers or prophets, that should tell you right there where it's coming from. Because the only one that would want you to be stagnant and not grow in holiness is the devil. And that's one of the main ways, again, to discern spirits. And so all of this stuff kind of came to me this morning after, I did the video that I did with the readings, which were really cool this morning, really awesome readings. So again, I may be putting all of this stuff kind of together on a chalkboard. It won't be done in a way where, it'll be more from a teaching standpoint of how I understand things. And so, if I do that, I'm still praying about it. But this is one of the ways to discern these things. So we should have absolutely no fear, no anxiety. All of our focus should be on Jesus and on the hope that's promised from Our Lady. And that's a period of peace, after we go through a trial. And so, that's the most important thing, is to grow in holiness and keep our eyes focused on Jesus and Mary. Jesus in the gospel told us not to worry, to have no fear whatsoever, to be like little children before the Father. that not a hair of our head would be harmed. Um, he promised, he said, how much more will the Father um, bring justice to those who call on him day and night? He will not be slow to bring justice, but he will answer immediately. And to call day and night, that means to be praying without ceasing. You know, and again, John in his epistles, perfect love drives out fear. And that's what we need to grow in. We need to learn how to grow into perfect love of God. And perfect love of God is dying to self-will for his will. And the only way that happens is by God's grace and us praying and us dying to self and not falling into discouragement and anxiety and fear. At one point, I think, I don't remember which gospel account it was, but Jesus told us not even to worry about what we are to eat or what we're to wear. He will take care of all of that. And, if the time comes, as he said, as it was in the days of Noah and as it was in the days of Lot. Noah and Lot were very, very prayerful people. And they were the ones, no matter what was going on around them, even in Noah's day, with all the sinful and godlessness that was going on in Noah's day, and all the immorality and impurity that was going on in Lot's day, their focus was on God. And because of that, they received instruction on where to go. They didn't plan it out. It was a grace given by God because they were righteous. And that's what we're called to be, righteous. And so, again, it just popped in my head this morning when I was doing this. And, this was going to be a short video just, to have you guys kind of look into the Sweden thing, because, again, I never thought I would live to see that. And to ask you to pray for the people in China, because, again, well, I already gave you the reasons. But when this popped in my head this morning, I really wanted to share it with you guys because you can see the contradiction in the effect that a lot of these things on the outside are having on us. What we see happening in the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine, being worried that it's going to spill over, being on a razor's edge of a nuclear war with Russia, and what's happening in China. The CCP, it's only a matter of time before they start feeling, vulnerable. I think they already are. So really, really pray. We need to pray for the people in China and that they're protected, that God give them grace and protection. Because, we've seen it historically. We've seen it where it ends up. And so pray for China. Pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy every day and offer it in reparation for the sins committed by the United States. Stay away from anything and everything that causes fear or anxiety or discouragement, which is a lack of hope. And focus on God, focus on Mary. And, if you have to, go to those readings this morning and read them again. That's the promise. And that's what we should be focused on. As Paul says, we can't even imagine, nor has it entered the human mind, what God has prepared for those who love him. And if we're not focused on God, we're going to fall into discouragement. We're going to fall into despair. We're going to fall into anxiety. And so the thing is to really, really stay focused on Jesus and Mary and let that flame of love of Mary, that joy in your heart, just grow and grow and grow and grow no matter what else is going on around you. And, God hears the cries of our hearts. He hears our concern in our prayers for those that we love, that may not be in the church, that may have yet to be converted. I guarantee you God hears those prayers. Jesus told Faustina that is the one prayer that is always heard and is always answered. So we need to pray not only for those that we love to be converted and to come back into the church. That prayer will be answered, but we need to pray for mass conversions. And that's really what we're being called to. We're called to enter into Mary's heart and begin to intercede with her for the conversion of sinners and the salvation of souls. And anything that's taking time away from that is time that's not well spent. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I got a couple other things I'm planning on talking about, maybe some more of scripture, um, and some things coming up. Like I say, the talks at the parish. Again, keep those in prayer. You know, I'm really praying for the Spirit to move there. So, and just for the people there to be anointed. And you know, the Deacon Stephen, again, he's a great preacher. I hope he lets me put his talk up on this channel, because Deacon Steve's a really, really good preacher, really solid. And so anyway, in the meantime, go ahead and look up the thing in Sweden. The other thing, I think the video was called "Died Suddenly," and there's a lot of information coming out concerning the vaccine, or some of the vaccines. And then again, just pray for China, you know, because this is really what it has to do with, is controlling our every move, knowing wherever we're at, you know, forced vaccinations, forced this, that, and the other. And, you know, there's coming a time where, you know, we're going to really be ostracized as Christians. You know, anybody that's a conservative and has moral values and doesn't agree with this, what I believe is a spirit of Antichrist spreading over the world, is going to be ostracized, shunned, and persecuted. And so the focus, again, isn't, we need to be aware of that, but the focus, again, is to be on Jesus and Mary, and to believe that miracles happen, because God is faithful, and Our Lady doesn't lie. So, you know, it's actually, you can feel a lot of joy if you begin to see, even though a lot of people are headed down the wrong way, they're going to be converted. There will be mass conversions. And we know that from Our Lady's message of Fatima. Russia will be converted. You know, authentic Catholic prophecy, China will be converted and come into the church. We need to live and proclaim the gospel, especially in our actions, and sometimes with our words. So in the meantime, I hope you guys have a great night, and may God bless you. May he keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you, and may he grant you his peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.